Hello, we're beginning chapter 12, which is not on moral development. Sorry about that. It's on gender and sexuality, section 1 of 1, and we'll be talking about gender, some gender differences, and things related to sexuality. We begin talking about gender and sex. What's the difference? Gender is that social dimension of being male or female, what others expect of us, and sex is the biological dimension of being male or female. Now, both genders are impacted by restrictions and opportunities that a society provides. Gender stereotyping. These are those societal expectations and beliefs about being male and female. Generally, we think of stereotyping as being a bad thing because it can limit opportunities. Children start to think about themselves as being a boy or a girl at a very young age, and children can be very rigid in their attitudes about being male or female. My son's kindergarten teacher shared an incident that occurred when his class took a field trip to Spartanburg Regional Medical Center. Everyone in his group knew that girls can grow up to be doctors. My son, who likes to stir things, piped up and said, "Hey, boys can grow up to be nurses." His classmates told him, "No, no," but the tour guide shared that yes, indeed, boys can grow up to be nurses. My son's college roommates, his mother was one of South Carolina's first female engineers. Mike remembers being asked if he was going to grow up and become an engineer too, and he would reply, "Oh no, that's a girl job." It's really hard to help children avoid gender stereotyping. In many ways, boys have a more difficult time with gender expectations. It's fine for a girl to want to play with blocks, to be athletic, otherwise engage in what are thought of as traditional male activities. But boys who engage in those traditional female activities are going to be subjected to much more pressure to stop that. Now, I want to address some gender differences over the next several slides. I want you to know that 50 years ago, to acknowledge, to even insinuate that there were any real gender differences was academic suicide. I remember hearing that to say there was a male and female brain was like saying there's a male and female kidney. Well, fast forward 50 years, and guess what? There's a male and female kidney. We're not sure why, but one of the primary failure factors in kidney transplants is to cross genders, to give a male kidney to a female or a female kidney to a male. It is, of course, important to keep in mind that differences are not good or bad. They're differences. One of the big, very real differences between the sexes are hormones. Ladies, we have high levels of estrogen. They drive our menstrual cycles. They give us our curves. Men have high levels of androgens, with testosterone being the primary hormone. It drives those secondary sexual characteristics we associate with males. Now, we suspect that some of the gender differences we see are the result of things that helped us to survive as a species for 10,000 years, things that may not be so applicable or needed today. What are some other differences? We see that more males are conceived, but males are more fragile. They die younger than females. There are some brain differences. The corpus callosum is larger in females. This is a structure that facilitates communication between the two halves of the brain. Males can have larger areas in the parietal lobe, which may contribute to visual spatial skills. We now question whether females have superior verbal skills. They do develop language more quickly than boys, but gender differences disappear over time. Now, for many years it was reported that boys did better in math than girls. they still do, but not by much. There have been several things that have made some changes here. Single gender classes for math and science seem to benefit both genders. Now, there's also a lengthy history of us telling girls that they aren't good at math, and many of us have worked very actively against this unhelpful belief. We do see boys as being overrepresented at both ends of the math curve. They are more likely to be the student who is much better or much worse than others at math. That gives them that flatter curve. There is some sense that testosterone may contribute to superior math skills. This would mean that males with low levels and females with high levels would have those superior math skills. Now, we do know there are some interesting thinking differences. For example, if a woman wakes her husband in the middle of the night to ask him, "What is 3 times 7?" he will say 21 and go back to sleep. If a man wakes his wife with the same question, she will reply, "Why are you asking?" We also know that men and women typically give directions differently. Men tend to navigate by street names and mileage numbers. Women navigate by landmarks. A few more differences. These are regarding aggression. Males are more aggressive than females, regardless of their age. Males tend to take longer to develop emotional self-regulation than females. We also ask them in school to sit and engage for long periods, which likely precipitates some behavior problems. We used to think that girls were more verbally aggressive than boys, but that has not been supported by research. Girls are getting more physically aggressive. 30 years ago, we didn't have juvenile facilities for females. We certainly do today. We also know there are some communication differences, so-called rapport talk versus report talk. Now, I want to share some interesting things that have changed for women. In 1960, a woman could not get a credit card, well, unless, of course, her husband co-signed. She couldn't serve on a jury. This did vary from state to state, but generally women were thought to be too fragile to hear any grisly details and too emotional to remain objective. In 1960, women could not obtain birth control. The pill had been available since 1957, but it was illegal to prescribe it for birth control. It took a court case for married women to get it for family planning purposes. Finally, women could not go to Harvard. That didn't happen until 1973. Now, I've attached a YouTube address here. It has a 3-minute interview with awesome Kay Switzer. Kay was the first woman to run in the Boston Marathon, 1967. Women were not allowed to run the Boston Marathon until 1971. This rule was in the guise of protecting women who were judged physiologically incapable of running 26 miles. They truly believed that this would make a woman's uterus fall out of her body. The next topic is sexuality. This is one of Santrock's charts presenting the continuum of sexual orientation. This slide, we're looking at gay behavior. I've been given to understand that the term homosexual is now considered a pejorative term. We want to recognize that there are a number of contributory factors, including both genetic and environmental forces going on that impact on your sexual orientation. It was in 1962, Illinois became the first state to decriminalize gay sex. Nationwide, it was not decriminalized until 2003. It had to go through the Supreme Court. In 1973, homosexuality was removed from DSM as a mental disorder. Talk a little bit about the dangers of unprotected sex, including oral sex. Bacterial infections like chlamydia, gonorrhea, and syphilis may not have symptoms, especially in females, but these are very dangerous. They lead to infertility and or death if they're not treated. Human papillomavirus, also known as venereal warts, AIDS, and herpes, these are all caused by viruses. They're treatable, but none of these are curable. Our last topic is contraception. We have this thing that somehow we believe that if we tell people how to prevent pregnancy, that this in some way condones sex. However, if you've ever worked with adolescents, or if you've ever been an adolescent, then you probably know that adolescents are going to have sex, whether they know how to protect themselves or not. We know that by offering more information about pregnancy prevention, plus having readily available, truly effective contraception has contributed to a dramatic drop in teen pregnancy rates here in the U.S. These are down about 70% since 2008. Along with information and contraception, we attribute this drop to adolescents having less sex and even reality TV shows that follow the travails of teenage motherhood. Despite our drop, the U.S. still has one of the highest teenage pregnancy rates among developed countries. We have a number of concerns that relate to adolescent pregnancy, including they're more likely to have low birth weight. Many of these young women don't get adequate prenatal care. Many of them will drop out of school, although we've made a number of improvements in this area, and poverty. This is a graph from 2017, the most recent one I could find, which compares U.S. teens and their pregnancy rates compared to other teens. This is the end of Chapter 12. Next is Chapter 13, which is moral development.